I was standing in my own kitchen, the kitchen I had paid for. The kitchen I had tiled myself on a summer weekend with bleeding fingernails and a YouTube tutorial. When she looked me dead in the eyes and said, asterisk, this has never really been your house anyway. Asterisk, and something inside me didn't shatter the way she expected it to. It went very, very quiet, and that silence was the most dangerous thing I had ever felt in my entire life. Because it was the silence of a woman who had finally decided she was done. I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to tell you is not just my story. It is the story of every woman who was ever told she was too much and not enough in the same breath. Every woman who gave until she was hollow and then was punished for being empty. And I need you to hear how I got out, because if I got out, so can you. Let me take you back 11 years. That's how long I poured myself into a family that treated generosity like a character flaw. I was 26 when my mother-in-law, Vera, first moved in, temporarily. She said, just 3 months while her apartment situation sorted itself out, and those 3 months became a year, became 3 years, became a decade of me rearranging my entire identity around a woman who viewed kindness as weakness and warmth as an invitation to take more. I was working full-time as a project coordinator, pulling in $62,000 a year, and my husband, Derek, was between jobs, which is a gentle way of saying he was comfortable letting me carry everything while he waited for something worthy of his potential. I paid the mortgage. I paid the utilities. I paid for Vera's medications, her doctor visits, her little luxuries, the expensive hand cream she insisted on, the streaming subscriptions she'd sign up for and never mention until the charge hit my account. In 11 years, I calculated it once, sitting alone at 2 a.m. with a spreadsheet and cold coffee. I had spent over $47,000 maintaining a household that did not love me back. $47,000. That's a down payment on a future. That's a master's degree. That's freedom. And I spent it trying to earn a place at a table I had built with my own hands. And I was happy to do it. That's the part that still breaks something in me when I think about it. I was genuinely happy to do it. Because I believed in family, I believed in showing up, I believed that love was a verb and not just a word you said when you needed something. I missed my cousin's wedding in Barcelona because we couldn't afford for me to take time off. I turned down a promotion that would have required 2 weeks of training in another city. Because Vera said she couldn't manage without me and Derek agreed that family comes first. I gave up the pottery classes I had been taking for 3 years. The one thing that was entirely mine. The 1 hour a week that belonged to nobody else. Because Vera decided the clay smell bothered her sinuses. I handed over pieces of myself so quietly, so willingly, that I didn't even notice I was disappearing until one day I looked in the bathroom mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. She looked tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. She looked apologetic for existing. And I remember touching the mirror and thinking, asterisk, who did this to you? And then the honest answer came, slow and shameful. Asterisk, you did this. You let them. Asterisk. But it was Vera who truly understood the architecture of cruelty. She had a gift for it, the kind of gift that looks like nothing from the outside but feels like 1,000 small paper cuts from within. She would compliment my cooking in front of guests and then quietly tell Derek later that I'd oversalted it. She would tell her friends on the phone, loud enough for me to hear from the hallway, that her son had married someone very practical. Which is the word people use when they mean plain, when they mean ordinary, when they mean not quite good enough. She went through my personal journals once. I found them stacked differently than I'd left them, a page dog-eared that I had never dog-eared, and when I asked Derek about it, he told me I was being paranoid, that I was always looking for reasons to be upset, and something in the room shifted permanently after that conversation. I just didn't have the language for it yet. She pit Derek against me so elegantly, so consistently, that he stopped asking my opinion on things and started checking with her first. Our marriage became a triangle with me on the outside. I cooked. I cleaned. I paid. I smiled. I shrank. And Vera watched all of it with satisfied eyes and called it harmony. The trigger, the one that broke something open instead of just breaking me down, happened on a Sunday afternoon in March. At Derek's birthday dinner, with his entire family seated around the table I had set, eating the food I had cooked, in the house I had paid for. Vera stood up to give a toast. I assumed it was for Derek. She raised her glass, she smiled around the table and she said, word for word, I will never unhear this. Asterisk, to Derek, who has been so patient, so long-suffering, married to a woman who never quite learned what it means to put family first. And the table went quiet. And then someone laughed nervously. And then Derek said, "Mom," but not like he was defending me, more like he was mildly inconvenienced. And I sat there with my wine glass in my hand and my face completely still, and I felt something inside me click off like a light switch. Not rage, not tears, something colder. Something architectural. I thought, asterisk, she just did this in front of witnesses. She just told me exactly who she is, and he just told me exactly who he is. And now I know exactly what I have to do. Asterisk. I didn't cry that night. I didn't fight. I went to the bathroom during dessert, looked at myself in the mirror, that same tired woman, and I made her a promise. Never again. I said it out loud, barely a whisper to my own reflection. Asterisk, never again will I beg for a seat at a table I built. Never again will I shrink so someone else can feel tall. This ends quietly and it ends completely, and it ends on my terms. The next morning, I started making moves. No announcements. No confrontations. No dramatic scenes. I opened a separate bank account at a different bank. Not our joint bank. A different one. One neither Derek nor Vera had ever heard me mention. I started redirecting $200 a month from my paycheck into it. Small enough not to be noticed immediately. Large enough to matter over time. I called a family lawyer, not a divorce lawyer yet. I wasn't ready to name it that. Just a consultation. Just to understand what I was entitled to. What 11 years looked like on paper. What my name on the mortgage actually meant legally. The lawyer's name was Sandra, and she was calm and precise, and she looked at my documents and said, asterisk, you are in a much stronger position than you think. I held those words like a life preserver. I went home that afternoon and made dinner and smiled and said nothing. I started documenting. Everything. The date Vera had moved in. The receipts I could find for her medications, her subscriptions, her doctor's visits, all paid by me. I requested bank records going back 7 years. I quietly photographed the condition of the home, every improvement I had made, every renovation, every repair I had paid for independently. I kept a private journal, encrypted on a cloud account neither of them had access to, and every time something happened, a dismissive comment, an overheard phone call, a moment where Derek sided with Vera over something factual and clear, I wrote it down with the date and the time and what was said and who was present. Not to punish anyone, to protect myself. Because I had finally understood something essential. Documentation is armor, and I had been walking into battle naked for 11 years. Weeks passed, then 2 months, then 3. I was still making dinners, still paying bills, still smiling at Sunday family calls. But underneath it, I was building something they couldn't see. A foundation, solid and mine, that no one could pull out from under me this time. I found an apartment. A 1-bedroom, with big south-facing windows and hardwood floors and a kitchen small enough that only one person could ever be in it at a time. And I stood in that empty kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon and I cried, not from sadness, but from something closer to relief so profound it physically hurt, like a bone setting back into place after years of being dislocated. The day came on a Thursday. I had prepared everything the weekend before. Boxes, quietly packed and stored in my car and at a girlfriend's house. I had already spoken to Sandra twice more. Derek could buy out my share or we could sell. Those were the only 2 options, and Sandra had drafted the documentation to make that clear in writing. I waited until Derek was home, until Vera was in her room with her door open the way she always kept it, so she could hear everything, control everything. And I sat down at the kitchen table and I put a folder in front of Derek and I said, very quietly, I need you to read this. He looked at the folder, he looked at me, and he laughed, a short, confused, dismissive laugh, and he said, asterisk, what is this? And I said, asterisk, it's the last 11 years, it's every receipt. Every account, every legal document with my name on it. And it's a letter from my attorney explaining what happens next. Asterisk, the laugh stopped. From Vera's room, I heard the silence change quality, the listening kind of silence, sharp and still. Derek opened the folder. I watched his face move through confusion, then alarm, then something that looked almost like shame. But I had stopped being interested in his emotional journey by then. I had my own journey to attend to. He said, asterisk, you went to a lawyer? And I said, asterisk, I went to a lawyer. He said, asterisk, when? And I said, asterisk, 3 months ago. While you were watching television and your mother was telling her friends, I didn't know what family meant. Asterisk. Vera appeared in the doorway. She had her reading glasses on her head and her expression arranged in that familiar architecture of wounded authority, the look she deployed whenever she needed to reframe a situation in her favor. She said, asterisk, what is going on in here? And I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time without apology in my eyes. And I said, asterisk, Vera, this conversation is between me and my husband. And after today, most conversations will be. Asterisk, she opened her mouth. I turned back to Derek. She closed it. And in that moment, the power in that room rearranged itself so completely, so permanently, that even she seemed to feel it because she didn't say another word. She just stood there in the doorway, and for the first time in 11 years, she looked uncertain. Derek tried to negotiate. He tried to appeal. He said things like, we can fix this, and let's talk to someone together, and asterisk, you're being extreme. And I felt nothing combative, nothing vengeful, only clarity, clean and absolute as winter light. I said, asterisk, Derek, I spent 11 years trying to fix this. I spent $47,000 being a part of this family. I missed a wedding. I gave up a promotion. I gave up pottery classes. Pottery classes, Derek. And last month your mother told your family in front of witnesses that I didn't know what family means. I know exactly what family means. It means I'm done. Asterisk, he didn't have an answer for that. There is no answer for that. The truth, spoken clearly and without performance, tends to leave very little room for argument. Within 6 weeks, I was in my apartment with the south-facing windows. Within 3 months, the house was listed for sale. Derek couldn't afford the mortgage alone, which Sandra had known and I had quietly noted. Vera moved in with Derek's sister, who I understand found the experience illuminating. Derek called me twice. I let both calls go to voicemail. I didn't listen to the messages for 2 weeks, and when I finally did, they said what I expected. Regret wrapped in self-pity. And I deleted them both and made tea and sat in my quiet, small, entirely mine kitchen, and felt something I had not felt in so long I'd forgotten it had a name. I felt safe. Not the false safety of keeping the peace. Not the exhausted safety of being needed. Not the conditional safety of being good enough. Real safety. The kind that lives inside you that no one can revoke, that doesn't depend on anyone else's mood or approval or memory of what you sacrificed. The kind of safety you build when you finally stop outsourcing your worth to people who were never qualified to hold it. Vera lost her comfortable arrangement, her influence, her audience, and the narrative she had built around being the matriarch of a household that I had been funding with my silence and my labor. She lost it not through any dramatic confrontation, not through screaming or accusations or scenes. She lost it the moment I stopped needing her to see me clearly, because I had finally learned to see myself. Here is what I know now. On the other side of all of it, you cannot heal in the same environment that broke you, and you do not have to announce your departure to the people who never noticed your presence. The most powerful thing I ever did was not the lawyer, not the documentation, not the apartment. It was the moment in that bathroom mirror when I made myself a promise and then kept it. When I decided that my peace was not a luxury I could afford to give away. When I understood that every time I shrunk to make someone else comfortable, I was teaching them that I was available for less than I deserved. And the lesson I needed to teach, the only one that mattered, was that I was no longer available at all. You are not a supporting character in your own life. You are not a resource. You are not a convenience. You are a whole, complete person. And the moment you stop performing gratitude for being allowed to remain in rooms that were never worthy of you, that is the moment your real life begins. It began for me on a Thursday, at a kitchen table, with a folder of receipts and 11 years of silence finally given a voice. And I have never once, not for a single morning since, wished I had waited longer. If my story reached something in you today, if some part of you recognized yourself in the woman who kept giving, who kept shrinking, who stood at a mirror and barely knew her own face, please share this with someone who needs to hear it, like this video and subscribe. Because every week I come back here to remind you and remind myself, we are allowed to take up space. We are allowed to choose ourselves, and it is never ever too late to become your own safe place.